All right, welcome back, everyone. Admin Mastermind and Teach Better Family. We just got finished with a phenomenal conversation talking about creating a positive culture, which actually turned, and we switched the verbiage to resilient culture, which I love. So we'll get into that and more. But first off, I want to thank Katie Miglin for not only joining Admin Mastermind, but also joining me for the Mastermind recap.
Hi, good
Hi,
morning. I'm
good
so glad
morning.
I get to be here.
I'm going to take that as a true statement
Mhm.
and talk about really what we discussed as far as getting a gauge of where folks felt the positivity was within their campus. Because as we know, spring has sprung, and some folks are feeling like they're already in spring break or that
Mhm.
the school year is finished. And so getting that gauge, Katie, what did you feel like was kind of the mood of the group or where things were in regards to the campus or the district?
I'm gonna be honest, I felt like people were kind of sugarcoating their answers because they didn't necessarily want to come across as Debbie Downers because
Yes.
it was, their gauge maybe was a little higher, but then their description was like, well, there's budget cuts, we're laying people
Mhm.
off,
Right.
we've got testing. And so the reality is it's like, yeah, this is a tough time of year. You're at the top of the hill. You want to be able to start going down the hill of the school year and kind of like coast to summer, but we know we're still several months away from that. And so it was kind of it was like people had a moment to sit in their feelings this morning. I don't know if you felt the same, but it just
Yep.
seemed like there was a little bit more of a negative vibe as far as what people felt like their school culture was, which I did appreciate when we switched the language to resilient,
Mhm.
because I think that is more what we are looking for, more what we want. But I did appreciate the brainstorm session of what we could do to kind of change our feelings in our buildings.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, this topic came from last week with Danny Bauer. We had a really long session with Danny, which shout out to him for staying for like well over an hour of his time, and we really got into this idea of culture, and
Yeah.
I threw out like, hey, should we continue the conversation next week? And it was a resilient yes from the group. So I could feel already last week that this was something that was happening on the campus level or the district where potentially some attitudes and behaviors were shifting to be
Mm-hmm.
more negative. So obviously leadership plays a giant role in that, but we wanted to get
Mm-hmm.
into the nitty gritty of like, yes, obviously it's important for the leader to be present in that, to try and shift that attitude or behavior. So what were some strategies? So Katie, I was curious on what were your takeaways from some of the things, because there was a long list of things that people are trying or have
Yeah.
implemented to kind of change the positive culture.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was interesting was like just the perspective shift. There was a lot of discussion around. I think you had started as a kind of a quirky question of like, what's something to implement in your school that would be fun,
Yes.
but then talking through like, switching with like teacher student so that a teacher lives the life of a student, or
Mhm.
district admin living the life of a student for a day, and just kind of the idea of like shifting your perspective. So even switching with a teacher or teaching a different content area for the day can give us a different perspective to where we realize like we are in this together, and it
Yep.
shines light on what struggles someone else might face or some positive things that other people might face. If you teach a content area that typically isn't students don't love, going to a class that maybe students really get excited about might shine some positive light on students that you might always struggle with or you always see behavior issues with. So I did like the brainstorm session around that specifically, of like getting out of your classroom, getting out of your office, getting out of like whatever setting you're typically in, and going and seeing kind of the view from a different lens is cool.
Yeah, we actually, and I didn't talk about this, and I don't know why, but it just spurred my thought process when you were talking. Was we used to do campus visits in other districts in the DFW area when
Mhm.
I worked in Texas. Was just taking admin and maybe a couple teachers and counselor to a different campus
Mhm.
and doing not only a walkthrough of that campus, but then also talking with various people, and it really spurred two things. So it was either we were super excited and want to implement something that we saw,
Mhm.
or two was the perspective of holy cow, I'm so glad I work in the school in the district that I currently am,
Yes.
because depending on what you saw, it does give you perspective. And so the same thing with, a teacher going into another classroom and having to teach another subject, or, even we talked about parents following a student schedule, or an admin or a teacher, just living that life through someone else's eyes is so important for a variety of reasons. But that was kind of a fun way of trying to get like a quirky tradition that maybe someone else hasn't implemented, and to share that out. But then also strategies of like how to continue to foster positive culture, especially in the spring. And I think, I don't know if you noticed this too, Katie, was this idea of making sure that your staff has a voice and an opportunity to share, and having kind of this way of modeling and sharing feedback. Did you think of any? Can you think of any other fun ideas that folks are doing right now in the spring to try and get a positive spin on the culture?
Well, it was like, yes, the voice, but also like surveying staff, something that, maybe you wouldn't necessarily do it at this time of year, but like something to think about as you transition into the next year of, surveying staff, what makes them feel seen, what makes them feel cared for. There was lots of people who talked about leaving notes, whether, like the handwritten notes, whether it's a Post-it or an actual card or a postcard in the classroom or in a mailbox, just like kind of just some positive words of like, I see you, I appreciate what you're doing for our building. That can be make a big difference on someone's day. Getting into classrooms, which at this time of year can be really hard, especially as admin who might be dealing with behaviors or testing or meetings. I know we've heard that for the last couple of weeks of a lot of like either, IEP reevaluations or teacher evaluations, just those things can take a lot of our time, but being very intentional of like visiting classrooms, visiting students, finding those positive little things that are happening, and just focusing on that for just even periods of time can make a big difference on not only your own personal headspace, but also just like letting people know you're out there, you're wanting to support them, even though your schedule might be tough. We spent quite a long time talking about like treats, and as silly as it might seem, I mean, I don't know, Josh, like I get excited about like donuts in the lounge, or if it's like free coffee or just any little thing that you can do. And I was very blessed. I came from a building that really focused on those silly little things that I did feel like helped the mood. But they a lot of times would just reach out to local businesses like, hey, can you just come in and do a discounted coffee bar? Or can you do, can we have a couple parents come and pop popcorn at the concession stand for staff to stop by and grab a bag? We know that not everybody has a lot of money, but just anything you can do that's like small, that just shows teachers like, I acknowledge that this might be tough. I acknowledge that we're going through kind of a tough season right now, but I'm here to support you, and I'm here to just lift your spirits, even in the short term. I think those little things do go a long way. So
the PTA and PTO for our campuses always knew like the spring was a tough time for teachers. So, making it on the back end, having more times for treats and bringing things in, gift cards, whatnot. Food was a big proponent this morning, coffee station. But also I thought was fun was just a lot of the games and things that they were, because budgets are tight, right? So for a lot of folks, so they were talking about like doing different brackets. So Women's History Month, March Madness bracket, or someone did a Pringles flavor bracket, which I thought was fun. Oreos. So there were a lot of like March Madness things right now, obviously for the season that we're in. But then also just finding like fun games, maybe a student versus staff game, or having different things going on. I know on our campus, we used to have in the spring, fun games for people to compete with. And we try to mix it up as far as, fun things that we would play music. Everyone had like teams they were on, they come down, they would participate, and then the winner would get prizes, of course. And, just we would record it too. And then we'd play it back for the staff, because some of the responses to things that they played were just, it was must-see TV. It was ridiculous. And so to, have the staff be able to watch that again and see them, it brought a lot of laughter, a lot of fun. Also, that camaraderie. I just want to shout out to some resources, because I think there were two books. Was Resilience Breakthrough and Orange Frog. Those two resources were provided in regards to, ensuring that you're creating a culture that is valued and they feel like they're part of the initiative, right? And then
Yep.
also that resilient culture, because it was brought up that it's good to have a positive culture, but that's not long lasting, right?
Correct.
Positive, it can't be 100% of the time.
Right.
As we know, as a campus, we're going to go through a lot of different things. I can think of so
Mhm.
many hard hitting things that have occurred on the campus where maybe a student was lost, or a parent of
Mhm.
a student had passed away. Maybe something in regards to the staff, maybe someone got really sick, had to go to the hospital. I mean, there's so many different examples. And how is your school culture going to withstand
Yep.
some of the bumpy times? And so I did appreciate like that mind shift that was provided during our
Mhm.
conversation.
Well, and it's not just necessarily having the correct like response, but also how does your staff come together in those moments?
Mhm.
We know that there are staff members who might go through a hardship, and it might take the team or department or grade level to step in and kind of help support a new sub, or especially if it's like a long-term sub. But I think that's how you judge the culture as well, is how do people work together to all come to that common goal.
Mhm.
And sometimes, yeah, it might take like a silly leprechaun search to bring people together, and then that's okay because it's something
Right.
silly. It's not necessarily tied to test scores. It's not tied to a common like overall initiative. It's just something fun.
Mhm.
So I would challenge people in the next month or so to try to think of something just fun to lift people's spirits. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but it can be just something that brings smile to people's faces. And especially if you're a campus that focuses heavily on test scores, we know testing season is on the horizon, and that can cause people a lot of stress. So reach out to your parent group, reach out to a local business, see if there's some way that you can just fold in some mood boosters just to bring some of that. Even if it's just a 1 day thing, it's better
Yep.
than nothing.
Yeah. And I was saying to the group too, like Facebook, the Admin Mastermind Facebook
Yes.
group is a great space to, go to ask a question. Someone had mentioned, hey, I want to get a gift for a first year teacher. What should I get them? Right.
Yes.
And some people threw it in the chat, but I also said, hey, throw in the Facebook group for those
Mhm.
who couldn't attend. So
Yep.
if you have a need there, make sure that you are joining this private Facebook group just for the Teach Better Admin Mastermind group. The link is
Mhm.
here. It's free, and you get
Yeah.
access to literally hundreds of administrators all over the country. And I would say, I guess, around the world, because we got some folks in Canada
Yep.
also that join us each week. So, with that, I just want to say thank you for those who are joining. If you're jumping on YouTube for the first time, seeing this video, we meet every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can go to this link, teachbetter.com/mastermind. It is free. And again, you get access to some phenomenal leaders. And
Mhm.
wow, I love the conversation this morning.
Appreciate
Even though we're struggling with potentially positive culture within a school campus and in a district, I did feel like the group was really like intentional about finding strategies that we're going to combat this.
Yep.
And I did love like the outlook of we've got this, we're going to get through the
Mhm.
struggle. And I think resilience is probably the best term that was brought to the table this morning.
Yeah, and you're not alone. There's other buildings that are struggling, so reach out to that Facebook group. If you need some creative ideas, you can always reach out to Josh or I, or
Yeah.
reach out to your other admin, and yeah, we'll get through this together.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining not only this week with the discussion, but the mastermind recap. And I just want to say, I hope to see everyone on Tuesday.